Welcome back to We Still Like Each Other, the podcast. I'm Travis.
And I'm Stephanie.
And this is the podcast where we show that the honeymoon stage can last forever.
Forever and ever.
Hey, baby.
Hey, daddy.
You look a little different.
Do I?
Something about the vibe.
Is it me or is it the space that we're in?
It might be the space. I see like blue lights.
We upgraded a little.
Just a little?
A lot.
So y'all been hearing us talk about this studio for what seems like...
An eternity.
I feel like close to a year, but maybe it's less.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finally sitting in it. Mm-hmm. It's like the almost final form. There's a few things that we want to get
little finishing touches here.
Like you'll probably see things pop up on your screen as the weeks go on, but this is the space, and we're here.
Yeah.
Can we clap it up for ourselves? We did that.
We did it. I'm so happy. I'm so excited. We missed last week because it was our anniversary, but we also used the time to kind of finish up the things we needed to do in this space, and I do not regret it. It's so hard as creatives to take time off because we're competing with these algorithms. We're competing with companies who have interns, who have social media managers, and it's just you and I. So when we have to take time off, it's hard.
Yeah, and our biggest thing, especially our first year, was consistency. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people used to praise us for it. Like, damn, she just had a baby and they dropping an episode.
Mm-hmm. And now we're taking a week off just because here and there.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
And it's also important not to burn yourself out no matter what you're doing, even if it's not in the creative field.
Yeah, definitely.
So last week was our anniversary. 7 years.
Lucky 7.
Lucky 7. Yeah, no, I'm not a big numbers guy, but I'm still proud of that. That's an accomplishment. It's an achievement. And Steph and I were both looking at each other like, 7 years. Mm-hmm. It flew and it didn't. It's the weirdest thing.
It feels like a long time, but it also feels like just yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest accomplishment is that I genuinely still like you.
It's in the name.
It's in the name. It sounds corny, but it's true.
Yeah.
We had a tough conversation yesterday, a discussion.
One of those discussions.
Yeah, and it was tough. It got,
It got heated.
It got heated. And within that same day, I felt like the peak happiness and love and comfort, in your arms. So it shows that in healthy relationships, you can have those two extremes in a single day. And it wasn't the opposite of the happiness wasn't complete hatred and unhappiness. And it wasn't we felt like
frustration.
Yeah, it wasn't we felt like leaving each other or anything like that. But it was definitely a moment of frustration and feeling unheard. Well, not unheard, but maybe misunderstood.
Yeah, I'd say misunderstood. That sums it up. And, I think we've discussed this plenty of times on this podcast, but I feel like when you have a discussion, as we call it, the goal isn't to be right? It's to come to an understanding. Maybe, I think a couple of weeks ago, Steph even pointed out, I can see your perspective on the situation, even though I don't fully agree with it. I can see how you're viewing it.
Yeah. I think my frustration comes from us having maybe a more developed way of communicating than your average couple. So knowing that I did my part in being very explicit in expressing what I need versus hoping you figure it out or, he should just know what I need. No, I'm very explicit. I've expressed exactly what I need. And in this moment, I feel like you're falling short. So then that's where my frustration comes in. Because it's I've done my part with the communication. So now what?
Yeah. And I know it's frustrating when you feel like you're repeating yourself. Mm-hmm. But
I also know that's part of it. I don't think anyone is just because you expressed exactly what you need doesn't mean I'm going to show up for you exactly the way you need it every single time because we're human.
Yeah, but, without giving away too much information, one of the things where it's I'm telling you, I hear you, right? Mm-hmm. And I understand where you're coming from, but you're also a little jaded because you're like, we've had this conversation.
And you've said you
and
hear
you've
me.
said that. So now it's like, for lack of a better word, fuck your words.
I need action.
Let me see your action.
Yeah.
So, it's tough being in that position, right? Because it's kind of like I've used up all my lifelines of saying, I got you. And now it's like, now you got to climb the mountain and prove it.
And then you're the type that you like to see a quick turnaround. If we ever have a discussion, a disagreement, you're like, all right, let's get back to us. And we can usually within a day. Like, we're never upset with each other a whole day into the next day, ever. But you prefer like right away, like, we're good now. And in the moment, I'm like, I can't be good now because you've said, I got you. You said, okay, I get it. And then where's the action?
Yeah.
So yeah, in case y'all didn't know, we still like each other, but we still go through our normal relationship
If you made it this far, we are now out here portraying this picture perfect marriage. We are out here showing y'all what it's really like to go through the motions of marriage. Yeah. And sometimes those motions are discussions where it's uncomfortable and fucking, that shit gives me chest pain. Like, I hate conflict, but it's unavoidable in any relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking now I might switch up the order of like what I wanted to talk about today.
Okay.
Just because this conversation right here is kind of leading to something.
My did you know kind of has this conversation.
It does? So you want to start with the did you know?
Yeah, sure.
All right, go ahead.
Did you know in the new studio? Did you know the way a couple fights can predict their relationship success? Couples who use constructive communication patterns such as active listening, empathy, and compromise are all components of healthy conflict resolution and more likely to stay together than those who use destructive communication patterns such as criticism and contempt.
Of course. Absolutely. I think
seems like a no-brainer, but it's also people aren't practicing it.
But I also think it's not people aren't practicing because they just refuse to do the thing that they know will improve their relationship. I think people are just unaware. People feel entitled to their feelings, and part of conflict resolution is like the ability like to feel like you were wrong. This other person or this other person's experience is just as valid as mine. And that's what's so difficult for people, right? Because once you have this idea in your head that your partner failed you in one way or another, we can't escape that idea, right? So even when your partner explains their side, you're like, but I was still wronged. I still felt offended. And it's so hard to kind of just step back, be like, I see your point, and like, let's move forward.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I hate conflict. Mm-hmm. So I feel like most of my life I've just been eager to kind of diffuse the situation, and however that may look. So it's just like, whatever you said, you're right, you got it.
And that shit is frustrating. That's not communication. That's just like giving in and like moving on. And it also, I was going to say makes you feel, but I'll be honest, because this is in our relationship, it makes me feel like you're just trying to get over it. Like it's something you don't want to spend time on. Like you don't want to spend time actually resolving the issue. You rather just be like, okay, sure, whatever you want, so that the conversation is over, but nothing actually gets resolved.
And it's, I don't know, I guess resolve looks different for me. I'm focused on getting back to peace. Mm-hmm. And I can't find peace.
So that's a short fix.
It's true. I'm not saying it's right at all. Mm-hmm. And especially in learning more throughout this podcast. Mm-hmm. But what has worked for me, or maybe it hasn't worked, but what has gotten the job done for me for many years is just like, whatever you need to be happy, I'm willing to do, even if it's something I disagree with. Mm-hmm. It's not healthy, because you should be the biggest advocate for yourself. So if I feel strongly about something, I shouldn't have any, like, I don't know, hesitation to put it out there. I feel like we're adults. Mm-hmm. We care for each other. We're best friends. We should be able to have healthy discourse, and it shouldn't feel like it's like marriage ending level conversations happening, you know?
Yeah. And then the truth is that you don't actually stick to that resolution long term. You're like, sure, whatever you want in this moment. You'll forget about it in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Then I'll go back to the bullshit that you were upset about for a few weeks, and then you'll blow up again. And then it'll be a cycle of like.
And then that's how you eventually get to the place where it's like, well, fuck your word.
I don't want to hear it no more.
Yeah.
Or unfortunately, what can happen too, that can be relationship ending if the issue is big enough, is like, I'm not communicating this anymore. I was explicit. I told you exactly what I needed, and you overpromised because you didn't really agree. You were just promising, you were just saying yes to get the conversation over with, but you didn't actually feel that it was a necessary change for our relationship.
I agree. And just to put a pin in that, it's like most things, I'm not perfect. And I feel like there's a lot of times where I have to stumble to get it. And stumble usually looks like you being fed up with having the conversations. And I'm like, okay, I really get it this time. I really get it this time. And like, I don't ever want you to shut down when it comes to communicating with me. I feel like it's one of our biggest strengths that I never even viewed as a strength until like maybe we were actually doing this podcast. And we always said the type of conversations that we have on this podcast aren't foreign to us. We aren't forcing this.
Yeah.
Like we sit down, no cameras, no mics, and we'll have in-depth conversations. So I wouldn't ever want to like lose that, because when there are conversations that happen that you're expressing your needs from me, and I'm just like yesing you to death and not following through. So, you know, selfishly, I'm going to like try and do better because I don't want to lose that aspect of our marriage.
Absolutely. So I think in going into the first topic, it's something that a lot of couples struggle with, and a lot of conflict, and maybe it's one of those recurring issues for many couples. It's been an issue for us. I know in the past we spoke about how do you encourage your partner without feeling like their parent, right? I know in heteronormative relationships, it tends to be like the woman doesn't want to feel like the mom to their male partner, right? And I remember in one of the clips, someone asked, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you draw the line between being encouraging, but then not wanting to sound like their parent? So I'm going to just ask you, what are your thoughts on that before I kind of break down what I've been thinking?
I think the longer you're with someone, you know their strengths and weaknesses, right? No matter how well intended they are, no matter how much they tell you, I want to accomplish X, Y, and Z. We all have our shortcomings where sometimes we need that push. I'm very vocal about the fact that even career-wise, I wouldn't be where I am if you didn't like nudge me in the right direction. You saw an opportunity. It was like, take it, because I think it'll lead to something great. And yeah, it did. It couldn't have, but at least I took that chance, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like your record speaks for itself in the sense that every time I have taken a leap because of you, or every time I have put in my best effort into something, it's worked out. So 7 years later, if you're telling me to do something, I feel like your record is strong enough where I could be like, let me give it a shot, because obviously she's viewing it a different way.
Yeah. And specifically when it comes to that, like with career stuff, I've never felt like your mom when it came to that, because we didn't have like a battle. Like it wasn't like I made a suggestion and you were like, no. Or it wasn't like I made a suggestion and then you were like, yeah, but then actually didn't do something. It always felt like the same type of encouraging I would do with a friend when it comes to career-wise, right? Like your worth, identifying your worth. Like you may not see it, but I see it. I think it becomes like I'm your mother if you're like, can you fill out this application for me? Or I haven't submitted it because my resume is not done. And you're like, okay, so have you looked for help to get your resume fixed? Are you waiting for me to do it? So I think the difference there specifically with that, it's the type of support you need, right? We had some friends over yesterday and they talked about what you bring to the table, like anyone brings to the table. That stupid ass like quote people like to say. And it's like, that's something I brought to the table. Like just,
it's not tangible.
Yeah, it's not tangible. You can't put a price on it, but like that encouragement or like pushing you to see yourself as having higher value than maybe you would have thought in the past. And you taking that and be like, all right, and now moving on, versus me having to force you and be like, look at the bills, look at the money. Like, that's where the difference is, right? But in a general sense, right? Because I think sometimes a partner might feel like a parent if they're constantly reminding them about taking care of their health, about eating better, about personal hygiene, about chores in the house, keeping a neat home or a clean home, a comfortable home, whatever that may be. And I started to think, like, how do we draw the line, right? So the first thing I thought about was like, you have to build trust with one another, right?
How does that show up?
So that you trust that the things I recommend are for your best interest, right? Gotcha. And not a selfish reason, right? So if I'm encouraging you to do something career-wise, but only because now I want you to fund, like, I don't know, some interest of mine, like I need you to pay for equipment that I need for this activity, then that's like, I don't trust you. It's selfish, right? So you have to have that trust. Do you trust that the person you are with, the person that you have to encourage and motivate, is genuine and unselfish, right? The other thing was, don't over ask. If you feel like you're constantly asking someone to do something for themselves, you're becoming their mom. They have to want it.
At some point, it's in their head, right? It's stuck there. Like once or twice, it's always in the back of your mind. So it's what you do with that information afterwards. So following up, and let's say they did it on the 10th time. Did they really want to do it? At that point, you're
you shouldn't even be asking 10 times anything.
I'm being extreme, but more than twice, it's just like it's nagging and you're asserting an idea on someone that they potentially don't want to do.
But I will say, sometimes a partner is pushed to nag because that partner refuses to just commit to their own personal growth.
There's an example you use, but it's like, if I get results when I do this, that shows me that that's the only way to get the results, right? So if me saying something 10 times gets you to do the thing, now I'm gonna think it takes.
I'm a nagger. Yeah, I have to nag in order for him to follow or to do something. Yep. That's me with my temper, my attitude.
I didn't want to say it.
Right? And I'm like, I'll say something 2 to 3 times. And then it's like on the 4th time when I kind of yelled, now you listen.
He's like, oh, so that's what you need.
So you're kind of training me, in this whole like Pavlovian dog version of like, the only way I get a result is if I yell, right? So if you are not taking personal responsibility, so that was my next point. I won't have to ask over and over if you have personal responsibility for your own personal growth and your own healing, right? Because this could be related to mental health healing, to personal physical goals. So you have to have personal accountability. If your partner doesn't have that, you're going to sound like their mom. And I think that just shows that they have childhood shit that they haven't healed from or haven't grown from. Yeah. So that I believe that's just the recipe. Having personal accountability, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you're just responsible for your own growth. You know, as an adult, that there are things you can do to grow as a person, right? And maybe you feel like you're content with who you are as a person, but maybe there's room for development for your relationship, right?
So it kind of makes me think of, I think right before the podcast, we were joking about breakfast, right? And he was like, I said, I would still survive if me and you weren't together, right? And he's like, yeah, what would you make? Like
cereal
every day. I'm like, maybe, or maybe like a boiled egg or something. But then I followed up with, I have also learned a lot of skills since being with you.
You don't be using them. It's true.
But I don't have to.
That's the issue. You think you don't have to. Like, you don't have to. It's not life or death. In the sense of
survival.
No, but you think you don't have to because I do it, right? But once in a while, you should just offer to be like, here's breakfast. Here's something.
I think it's more so around the food conversation than anything.
Exactly.
You made me lose my whole train of thought with that. Let's just move on.
So yeah, basically, you won't become the mom if your partner's a responsible adult, if they take their own personal growth seriously, and everyone needs a little push, a little love, a little support. What did I tell you that I need support with, and how you could support me? Because we talk about communication and being explicit with what you need. I recently had a conversation with you about exactly the kind of support I need from you. Do you remember?
In regards
this to... This is a test.
If you see the camera cut, that means I got it wrong.
No, I'm going to leave it in.
In regards to working out?
Was that what I needed support with? Yeah. Why are you acting like you don't know?
Because, come on, I'm not a good test taker.
So what did I need support with? What did I ask you for support with in terms of motivation?
It was basically making sure you find the time to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even like the night before, how the other day, like I don't know if you weren't feeling good, but you just went to bed at like 8 o'clock and you woke up feeling amazing.
Yeah.
And it set yourself up for success. Like you went, like the last 2 days of last week, you went ham in terms of just organizing, cleaning. And
I was like, where did this energy come from? And I'm like, oh shit, I went to bed at 8 o'clock last night. Like I just fell asleep on the couch and Travis kind of put the kids to bed and then was like, go to bed. And I'm like, that's what I needed. I needed a full night's rest.
So in terms of just making sure that not only you, but us as a couple, like we're getting to bed, shit, even 8 o'clock, because I have to be up at 4 in the morning and going to bed at 10 at night is not conducive to a positive day. So getting to bed early, making sure you're up, and then also throughout the day, like holding you, I don't want to say accountable, but just making sure you're working on the things you have set for goals. And
he didn't really answer it correctly. It's all right. It's okay. I'll give you an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
So your way of sometimes trying to motivate me to work out or like reminding me, it sounds like bossy, controlling. And I know it's not your intent, but it's like, all right, go ahead. Go put your shoes on. Go work out. And I'm like, no, because clearly if I didn't work out right now, it's because there's other things I'm focused on, things that have distracted me. Maybe I haven't rested enough. So instead of trying to like push me in the moment to just do the thing, it's a bigger conversation about like, how can we prepare you so that maybe tomorrow you don't miss a workout? Like what needs to be in place on a bigger scale in terms of like what's going on in our home to make you feel comfortable?
I could be wrong. I feel like I was saying that in terms of setting you up for success.
Kinda, but you were like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say you have set me up for success. We are going to bed early. You did check in, but I didn't work out. Then what?
Pow pow. No, what is it? I don't know.
It's more so like, okay, what can we do?
Okay, what are you gonna say?
No, you go.
I was gonna say our check-ins. Just in terms of, because we have created a new schedule for our marriage meetings, which is going to be every other week now. But it doesn't mean that we're not having conversations outside of that. So with that, it's like, I don't know, Monday. It's like, what does this week look like? How are we going to make it a amazing week? What are the things we're going to do? Because just because you want it to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. Like, yeah, there's, we talk about being positive and all that stuff, but you still have to put action to it.
Yeah.
So the check-ins.
Yeah. And this might sound super like shallow and unimportant, like working out. But for me, getting movement into my body improves my mood, improves my mental health, right? So it's not so like, oh, you missed a workout, like you're missing your summer body. It's literally not about that. It's
The other day, you were naked, and and I was like, you said something about like wanting to work. I was like, but damn, you look good right now. He's like, yeah, but I want to feel good.
exactly.
So there's a difference.
There's a difference. And I'm the type that I will go hard and not miss a workout for like 3-4 weeks. And then the minute I miss one, I go into like, I miss another 3-4 weeks, right? So what I was asking of you was like not allowing those gaps to be so long, and like just reminding me like, don't forget that it's not about just looking good. It's about feeling good.
Yeah.
And I know that you've tried in the past, but your way of trying is like, give me your phone, go work out right now. And it's like, it's kind of like sex. I need foreplay for working out. I can't just go in the moment, because if I could, then I would. You know what I mean? It's a whole mental thing.
And I just, knowing you, knowing your personality, it's just not, you don't react well to that type of energy.
No.
And some people do. Some people need that type of energy, but I just know from the day I've met you, the whole like aggression from a man is not the wave.
Yeah.
So
I don't care how well intended it is. Like, I don't know what, it's just your voice. I'd be like, who are you talking to, bro?
So if I had a more feminine voice, it would have worked.
Yeah. And we also talked about like this, I always refer to this kind of relationship in terms of accountability, kind of the way you respect certain teachers, right? When you're growing up. So I had a math teacher in high school that like, I just could not stand. Like we couldn't communicate, relate, nothing. And I just refused to do his work, right? But then I would have another like writing teacher that, although it was a lot more work, it was a subject that I was better at math than I was at writing. But just because I had a good relationship with the teacher and it didn't feel like a dictatorship. I felt like I had to show up for this teacher. Like I didn't want to let her down. So when you're telling me, go put your shoes on, it feels like the math teacher. Versus if we're having our weekly check-ins, we're prioritizing them, we're making sure that our week is set up, I'm like, I can't miss this workout because we've put everything in place together. We've planned this out together, and I have to show up for me because that means I'm showing up for him. You know? So there's a different approach to holding each other accountable that feels soft. If that, I don't know, lack of a better word, that just feels, you know what I mean?
I get it. And I'm definitely on board.
I appreciate it.
But before we move on, if you are listening on a podcast app, Apple, Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. 5 stars and a review if you can. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about the new studio. Is there anything y'all want us to add, take out? You notice the Your Product here. You know what to do. Yeah.
So if you're watching on YouTube, we do have like a small coffee table between us that we want to hopefully use for advertisement space. So if you have a product that you would like us to have here, please email us. What else? Patreon this week was fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of people on the interactive recap.
Yeah, so it's a Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time.
I feel like we've set it in stone. People are even making sure their schedules work around it.
Yeah, and I'm just happy with the turnout. It was a lot of fun. We get into in-depth, weird conversations. Like this week we were talking about when do you have the birds and the bees talk with your kids? And because of the internet and their access to it and having Google, we have to have these talks sooner and sooner because their curiosity is leading them to ask the internet certain questions, you know?
The conversation about flirting with your partner.
Yes.
That was funny.
One of the things a lot of people were asking us was, how do we flirt with our partner the whole day? And we kind of discussed that with the people on the interactive recap. It was a lot of fun. I think sometimes as women, we kind of leave the flirting and the keeping the intimacy alive. We kind of put it on the man since they're the ones who want to fuck all the time.
That's another common misconception.
Yeah, it is. It is like, well, I don't think it's a misconception.
Women are just as sexual and just as horny, and
some women are, but I think statistically, like if we were to actually survey men and women, I think men still skew on being more horny. I think honestly because of testosterone. But I do think there are women who are more. There are. But I think if we had to say who was more, it would be men. But I do think women, we have to take personal responsibility for our sexuality, our sex drive. So we also need to flirt and do the things we got to do so that it's nice and moist by the time we get to bed. So we talked about that. Like, how do we flirt with our partners? So yeah, Patreon's a lot of fun. The $3, $7, and $12 tiers all have access to our interactive recaps that are twice a week. And even if you can't
twice
join...
a month.
Oh, twice a month. Ooh, I said twice a week. No, that's too much. And even if you can't join, they're recorded and posted on Patreon as well. So it'll be just extra content for you to listen to if you need us more than once a week.
For sure. Patreon.com/we still like each other.
All right. So my next topic that I wanted to talk about is related to mental health and dating. So I was doing dishes the other day and I started to think about how we're obviously becoming more aware about mental health and mental health topics or mental health labels. And I think is a good thing. But then I started to think about, is it creating like a sense of pessimism about human nature, right? Like we see someone as a red flag and we think they're done. Like they can't be better. Like I started to feel that maybe we shun people when we see a red, quote unquote, red flag, or when they do use a mental health label to describe themselves, right? Like we kind of feel like, oh, stay away from that person. And it's creating like a negative connotation about just human nature in general, as if it's so like stagnant. Like if you are one way, that's the only way you could be, and like everyone should avoid you.
You're the worst version of yourself, and that's it.
And that's it, exactly. So what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely don't agree. Part of life is growing and evolving and learning from your mistakes. I'm not the worst thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I'm also not the same person I was when I was 18 as the same person I'm about to be when I'm 35, right? So if you looked at my trajectory in life, you see that even people have said as early as me and you meeting, they're like, wow, Travis is not the same person that I know. Or I didn't even think this was possible for you to bring something like this out of him.
Yeah.
But if you went based off of what the ideas that they had of me, you might have not given me a chance.
Yeah.
Or taking it even a step further, if you did judge me off the worst things I've done, if you didn't say, you know what, I don't think this person could change, we wouldn't still be here. We wouldn't still be, celebrating 7 years of marriage. So, and I do think it's a slippery slope, right? Because it's not just like, I can change. It's like, what are you doing to change?
Exactly.
So, no, I don't hold any stock in that. You're like, you can't be a different person or a better person.
And I agree with you. I just feel like the language that's embedded in our culture now around mental health and dating and relationships, we're kind of shunning certain people. We're like dismissing certain people and being like, okay, run.
So we've said, being in a relationship, there's this whole thing that you should be like 100% healed before being in a relationship. It's not always the case. But nor is it your job to say, just because this person isn't healed, that I want to take on their journey of becoming this better version of themselves. Like you have the right to opt out of saying, I'm good. Yeah. So if someone shows you something that we deem a red flag and you're just like, you know what? I don't think this person is, there is potential that this person could be way better than this small moment that they're showing me. But I also don't have the time to help them get there. So yes, if you're dating and someone like maybe they get aggressive once and like, I'm good, bye. I don't have time for you to.
You have the right to do that.
So yeah, it's more nuanced than that.
But even in established relationships, right? Sometimes a red flag pops up when you've already been together for a while. You've maybe already moved in together. And I feel like I just want to encourage people to like see their whole partner, right? And when you look at their past and maybe a behavior that's still lingering around that's now counterintuitive or counterproductive, be like, you know what? I know that behavior was needed for your survival, for you to be here now. So I can't be 100% mad at that behavior because it led you here. Now what? Now are we going to do the work to move on?
No. And I sometimes think people are better off having those life experiences, right? You've talked about your younger self being a lot more like aggressive and angry, and I don't know that if you hadn't gone through those things, maybe they would have shown up in your adulthood and I wouldn't have liked that version of you, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that you've seen it, you've disliked that version of yourself, and you've done the work to be a better version of your younger self, I'm reaping the benefits of that now, right?
Yeah.
I think even the other day I kind of like said, you know, I see you putting in the effort and I thank you. Like I'll sometimes I could see Stephanie's brain working in real time. Like she'll stop. And it's kind of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? She got A, B, C, D. And A is like, fuck you. And B is like, you know, I don't know. But
that reminds me, we had went to Target and there was like one long line, right? And then another register open. We go to the other register, but then her machine was messed up. So then we had to switch to another one. And this white woman, a Karen, skips us. Like she kind of rushes ahead of us to go in front of us. And I kind of looked at her and just looked at you and like laughed it off. Like I genuinely did not feel an ounce of rage. I was more so like typical Karen, right? But then when we left, you were pissed off. You were like so mad at her. Like you let it kind of like fluster you in a sense.
Yeah, like I definitely felt like my blood pressure went up.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, that's growth. Because Stephanie before would have been like, excuse me, like, hello. But now I'm just like, you know what? Who cares? We're going to be on the checkout line an extra minute or two. Like I acknowledge like this Karen ass bitch, but I ain't say anything.
Yeah,
I didn't do anything.
I don't know. I'm so respectful of people and their boundaries and just, you know, what's right and what's wrong or just what's acceptable and what's not. And it's just to me, it's like common sense. It's common courtesy. And in that moment, it didn't feel like she was just worried about herself in that moment.
I feel like old me would have felt like I had to say something because I didn't want to feel like a punk. Like she skipped me because she thinks I'm pussy. So I would be like, excuse me. And in my head, I probably had created this idea that like she might take this a step further next time she sees me, even though I'm never going to see this woman ever again.
There goes that pussy ass bitch right there. Let me go walk right in front of her.
You know, because like in high school, if someone punked you once, they going to punk you again and it's going to be worse. So in that context, you had to like defend yourself or say something like, I'm not the one.
You ever seen Life with Eddie and Martin Lawrence?
Yeah.
He's like, you give him your cornbread now, he gonna take more than your cornbread next time.
Exactly. But that's maladaptive behavior. If now as an adult, I'm in the checkout line with my kid and I feel like I need to tell this white woman who I'm never gonna see ever again in my life, like, I'm not the one. Don't skip me.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. It served you when you were younger. Like it made sense, but it doesn't translate to adulthood.
It doesn't. Not at all. And it depends on where you grow up, right? Some people don't have that issue in high school. But I grew up with some tough people who had some attitudes. And if I ain't fucking bark a little louder, I would have got chewed up. But it's different now. So I was like, wow, growth, maturity.
While my face is just like...
I was thinking of that SZA meme that's been going on. I'm so mature. But yeah, we derailed the conversation. I wrote down like, you know, we give up on people too quickly. Maybe one day this healing that we're doing and the things that we're applying to maintain our relationships, I feel like I have to also apply it to friendships. I feel like I more easily... or even relationship with family. I'm more so like, you know what? Whatever. Like, I'm easier to write people off that aren't you because we literally are together all the time. So I put a lot of stake into making sure we're okay.
That's interesting that you say that. I didn't know that that's your thought process in terms of like you're reconsidering things like that. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's like it could potentially like put you in a toxic situation where like maybe a relationship isn't serving you properly, but then on the other end you want to be like understanding of people's views and their upbringings and what made
their
them
experiences,
what made them make the decisions that kind of turned you away, like turned you off from them. But on the other end, you're like, I ain't no pussy ass bitch. And it's like, what am I going to accept? Because then it's kind of like giving in to something that you wouldn't accept from a partner.
Yeah. But it depends on what the boundaries this friend or family member is crossing. It depends on their own personal responsibility to change, grow, and heal.
And I think that's my issue. Where it's like, okay, let's say I'm willing to be the bigger person, but then it's like, you're the same person. That doesn't really work.
Yeah, it has to be on both ends. Both partners, both parties have to want to grow, heal, change. And in our personal relationships, our intimate relationships, we're together all the time. So this healing, we're seeing it in real time. If there's a friend or a family member that you see once a month, their whole life is happening at the same time. And maybe they can't focus so much on the things that need to be healed for them to be a better friend or mom or cousin or whatever to you. So it's definitely harder, but possible, I feel. There's this New York Times article that, y'all know I said it last episode. I pay now to like be able to read the New York Times. So
it's pretty cool. Like getting the emails, like I'm not opening everything, but if something catches my eye, I'll read it.
Yeah. So the one that caught my eye, because I already knew I wanted to talk about this, is how therapy speak took over dating. So I'm going to read like a couple of quotes, right? So there's this quote here that it says, this is part of competitive advantage. You know what competitive advantage means?
Sounds like some animal kingdom shit.
Yes, it goes back to like evolutionary psychology, right? Which is my favorite thing if you're new here. So basically a competitive advantage, right? So let's take it like back hundreds of years or whatever. And men are hunters and gatherers, right? And if a woman had a choice to choose between two men, she would pick the guy who looks more physically able to be a hunter and gatherer, right? So if you're 6'2", you have a competitive advantage over a guy who's probably 5'2", and can't climb a tree and get me like apples and shit from the top or whatever. No, apple trees are low, but whatever, you get what I'm saying. So now being in therapy is like a competitive advantage because it's seen to your suitors like, oh, wow, he's emotionally mature, right? Instead of being like, I'm 5'11" and I can bench press some large amounts, I'm like, I've grappled with the challenges of my childhood and I've thought deeply about my issues, right?
That goes back to what I was just saying as far as seeing someone with an issue, knowing that that's not their final form. But now you're deciding I don't want to be on their journey. But now if you meet someone who's like, I have some shit, but I've also gone to therapy for it, or I'm actively in therapy, that might make you want to join them on the journey more than someone who's not doing anything about it at all. Or
someone who's not even aware of their shit, The article also talks about how it shows some status, right? Because therapy ain't free and therapy takes time, right? So referencing therapy can also convey status in a more literal sense.
It's like dropping your money wallet. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to drop these 100.
It can serve as proof that you have financial means to receive care at a time when providers are in demand and that you can clear out the space and time. Because it's true, it takes time. And it shows commitment to change, because it's so easy to be like, I'm canceling on my therapist. I've heard people say like, oh, I had therapy, but I can move it. But actually committing to your healing, like, it shows commitment, in which a lot of people in our generation are afraid of. So maybe if you could commit to your therapist, you could commit to me.
That's pretty interesting. I feel like, I wonder how many people are just using that, right, as like something to put on their dating resume.
You know what's crazy? It says that like some people add it, just like before you would write like, I like to take long walks on the beach.
Or feminist.
You know, yes, or like whatever. It becomes like a hashtag to your dating profile because people think it's interesting, right? So that obviously there's going to be people who are disingenuous, but if it is genuine, it does look like, wow, especially for heterosexual men. The article points out heterosexual men are maybe notorious for avoiding their emotions. Mm-hmm. So if they can say, well, I'm in therapy, you're kind of flipping that stereotype on its head. Like, well,
ooh, say it again.
I'm actually facing my emotions like head on, and I'm going to therapy. What are your thoughts on therapy speak when it comes to the dating phase? Because I feel like we got into more of those terms like later on in our relationship just because we were unaware of it. But what about now, people dating in their 30s or people dating Gen Z who has all that therapy speak kind of already just on TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like the term red flag and all that stuff where it's like it's buzzwords. And I just hope people are really considering what those terms mean before they're like labeling people with that. So, I couldn't date them. They're a narcissist. And
but what about them using it on themselves? If they're on dates and they're talking about love languages, attachment styles, what's the other one that I was thinking of that you talk about, like trauma bonding or something like that?
It could be a little heavy for the uneducated too, right? So if kudos to you for having that knowledge, but also be aware that most people don't. Yeah. And you're going to be in a dating field with people who are ignorant to that information. So you might have to approach a situation as a teacher rather than someone who's just like assuming that they're talking to someone who's educated on the topic.
That kind of reminds me of like how uncomfortable I kind of get sometimes when people ask about my zodiacs and I'm not that well versed in it. And even not in a dating sense, but just in meeting new people, right? And they'll be like, oh, what's your... And I'm like, I'm a Gemini, but like I honestly don't know too much, just like the generic Gemini stuff. Where does your moon rise? And I've looked up like my moon and my rising. No, my sun, moon, rising, but I forgot them already. But I know I have a lot of Gemini, and people be like, oh my God, you have a lot of Gemini. But again, I feel kind of like stupid in a sense, or like I don't know enough about it, and it makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes. I feel like therapy speak or like these mental health terms on a first date could make someone feel that way as well.
Yeah. Could be potentially too heavy. And I think I understand what you're saying about the zodiac stuff, but I almost feel like that's still kind of something that people can laugh off, whereas therapy is like so much more serious. So it's viewed as like more heavy.
It depends on who you ask. So some people really put a lot of stake into it.
You mean the zodiac stuff?
Into the zodiac stuff, So to someone, if I went on a date with someone and I was like, I don't really know. I don't know what my rising is. They might be like, this girl's energy's off. Like,
or they might be vibing, go home, do some research. I'm like, oh, no, thank you.
Forget it. Never mind. That too.
And that's crazy to me. But it's, I don't know, to each his own.
I was thinking about when you're saying to each his own, right? In this week that we took off, I've been doing a lot of like being intentional, manifesting. I haven't been meditating, but I put on like meditations to play while I'm cleaning. Or
you sent me one the other day, I think.
Yeah, I sent you one the other day. And I started to think about how that improves my mood and puts me in a space to do the work to achieve the things I want, right? So how could I judge people if them being into zodiacs or into a religion that maybe I don't follow and it helps them do that? Like it puts them in a space to be better people, improve their own personal lives, show up for people in a better way, and accomplish their goals. Like everyone's entitled to have their thing.
Yeah. I like the positivity of the zodiac stuff.
Okay.
But my issue is when it's like it shuts you down from exploring a relationship, and it doesn't mean romantic, just in general. It's like I can't be friends with a Leo, 2 moons, whatever the shit is. But now it's like, oh, because of the day I was born, like our potential friendship can even blossom because of that.
Yeah.
So that's where that's my only issue with it. I mean, I'm here for the positivity, but the negative stuff, and maybe they don't view it as negative. Maybe they see it as protecting their energy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I noticed for me, like just bringing it back to like ways I've been trying to improve my overall mood and my overall productivity without being toxic. Cause I kind of get in a space where I'm overproductive and then I crash. And I think just playing those meditations in the background while I'm doing things to remind myself that like my value isn't tied to my productivity. Another thing I've been doing is instead of speaking in the future tense about how I want to be, I speak it as if I'm already that, right? Or for example, sometimes when people ask me what I do, I'm like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. And then if the conversation leads, I might say I have a podcast. Now, if people ask me what I do, I have a podcast. I'm a podcaster. And I'm a stay-at-home mom. You know, like, it's who I am. Like, I need to stop making it small. And I feel like in speaking that way, it's only going to bring more opportunities for the podcast because I'm already living as if this is my full-time job, because it is. You know what I mean? Like, and some people might find that silly. Like, just because you say you're a podcaster doesn't make you one. Some people might think like that's just dumb and doesn't make sense.
For me, it just depends on how you view success. I think success is what we're doing right now. You could make the argument that it's like, well, it can't sustain your life, but I don't know. I feel like people do so much bullshit with their time, their free time. It's like, look at the positivity that we're putting into the world. Like how many, even if, and I know it's more than this, right? But even if we've only touched 5 people with what we've done, that's more than most people are doing in a lifetime, right?
Mm-hmm. And it sucks because we do live in a capitalist world where work is necessary. Making an income is necessary to live, right? And we have 2 boys that are growing in their clothes. They outgrow their clothes. They're gonna need a college fund. So making an income is so important. But I don't want that to be the sole focus of this podcast because it's gonna lose its essence and its authenticity. But then it's like finding the balance because it's like everything I just said previously. We have kids, we have things we need to fund with our life. And I think for me, at least for right now, I feel that if I live as if this is my job, the money will come. Instead of worrying about money and thinking about lack and being so stressed and overwhelmed to the point that it stops me from being productive in this space, it's going to stop it from ever coming to me. Now, if I'm acting as if this is the job, then my day-to-day is going to be less anxiety, which means more time to actually produce good shows. And then now we have higher quality shows, which leads to income, hopefully, right? Mm-hmm. Or yes, it will. It's like manifesting plus work, right? Because a lot of times we think just speaking it without the work is going to do something. And I'm trying to live in a way that I'm speaking as if it's already there to reduce my stress and anxiety so that I have the ability to work harder towards it, to be productive without burning out, and then doing it consistently. So slow and steady. Instead of trying, even with working out, instead of saying, I'm going to do an hour a day, and then I could only keep it up for 3 weeks, and then I stop for 2 months. Slow and steady.
Yeah, slow and steady. I agree with everything you said, and I know that with the passion and our work ethic that this is going to be successful. And like I said, we define what that success looks like, and I feel successful already.
Yeah. I feel successful already. I do sometimes, I think the doubt that comes in my mind is like previous patterns of procrastination, inconsistency, and imposter syndrome, right? Like we've reached out to a couple of people to be guests on our shows that maybe I would have been too afraid to reach out to. Like I would have felt like, who am I to think they want to be guests on our show? And I'm pushing myself there. So slow and steady. I think I'm proud of where we are.
For the record, they were like over the moon to say yes.
Yeah.
So y'all will be seeing some guests in the near future.
Yeah. Knock on wood. But yeah, baby, you want to say anything to wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to wrap this up by saying, well, two things. My love.
Daddy.
Do you still like me?
I still like you.
You want to ask me?
Do you still like me?
Every day. But the way I want to end this is I want you to look in the camera. Mm-hmm. Say your name. My name is so-and-so, and I am a podcaster.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm a podcaster, producer, stay-at-home mom, and badass wife.
Yeah, that's how we're ending it.
All right. And just thank you to all of the listeners who've been here, who've kind of have watched our evolution. I feel like there's been numerous times where I'm like, I'm trying something new this week, and then I don't do it the next week. Thank you. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for believing in us. Thank you for sharing. If this is your first episode, let us know if you're going to go back to episode 1 and start from the beginning. I think that's always interesting when someone tells us that.
Someone told us that the other day. I'm just like, ugh.
I will say, our content, I stand by it from episode 1 all the way till now. It's just the quality of the sound and stuff, that the video quality.
We just had like 2 chairs on a white wall with a cause doll.
Yeah. Mad random. But I do stand by all our content from day one because it's always been genuine. You know?
So I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot. I hope you know. If not, we'll cut it in. But we're starting this new thing with our patrons where if you're celebrating something,
yes,
we want to shout you out. So we do have one this week,
yes,
and we'll be doing more throughout the upcoming weeks. But we have a patron by the name of
Evelise and Victor. So they're a couple.
And they just had a baby.
A baby boy. And she was on the interactive recap just a couple of days after giving birth.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I was watching the video and my mouth was just like the fact that she just had the baby.
Yeah.
Crazy. And it was an at-home birth. That's fire.
Yes.
Fire. So congratulations. Do you remember the baby's name?
I don't. I know it starts with an A.
I do remember it was an A. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to y'all. Congratulations. And we hope to, celebrate some more things. Doesn't always have to be a baby. It could just be like, hey, this week I didn't order takeout.
So yes, join us on Patreon. Our lowest tier is $3 a month, and you get to join interactive recaps and, and communicate with us. Our highest tier has our close friends vlogs. So yeah, join us on Patreon.
Yes. Peace, y'all.
Peace.